Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the April 8th, 2019 meeting of the Development and Governmental Relations Subcommittee to Holyoke City Council. Welcome. We have a pretty full agenda, so we'll get going fast. We have with us Councilor Valentin, Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Tallman, Councilor Murphy, and we have John Dijek from the Office of Planning and Economic Development. Marcus Merrill will join us shortly. And the first agenda item is prior meeting minutes. We don't have the prior meeting minutes. So if I could get a motion to take up items 2A and 2B, that'd be great.
Motion to take up items number 2A and 2B.
Second. On the motion to remove item 2A and 2B from the table, all in favor? Aye. Let's see here. These pertain to a couple of things. One is a MOU between Holyoke, Genie, Columbia Gas. It's a petition, and I have the petition with me, and all sorts of signatures, a couple hundred signatures on here. And the other one is a resolution, which we've already read into the record. That was filed on November 15th. We've taken this up. This is multiple times here. Let's see, we took it up in December, and we took it up again in March, and it went to full city council back here, and this is April 8th. So the hope is that we can resolve it tonight. We have, fortunately, the maker of the order, Councilor Valentin. So, Councilor, what's your pleasure at this point?
Thank you. So I have been in touch with the folks from Neighbor to Neighbor who had requested that we file this. At that time, it was Councilor Roman and I who had been asked to file this, and we did. So I wanted to address them separately. After several conversations with the Neighbor to Neighbor folks and the meetings and contacts they've had with our colleagues in terms of the resolution, they are requesting at this time that we give that resolution leave to withdraw. There is not a majority of an interest on the body at this time to do something like this, and as we know, resolutions are not legally binding. And so at this time, the folks from Neighbor to Neighbor, after some conversations with myself and other members of the council, are requesting that we do a leave to withdraw and just leave it at that. Yes.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Under discussion, anyone? Hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's see. Agenda item 3. Oh, look who, right.
I'm sorry. That was just the resolution.
Oh, the resolution. Oh, I thought
2B. You got 2B now.
Okay, I thought, well, the 2B was, well, the resolution's withdrawn. Okay, I thought we were taking, on 2B, what would you have us do?
So,
sorry about that.
That's okay. I know we have a long agenda, but let's just make sure. So on the request for the hundreds of signatures, couple hundred signatures that you were referring to,
yes,
with a petition for a hearing, they do still want to go forward with that, and have an opportunity for the community to express what the concerns are regarding the proposed pipeline. So I'm assuming because they submitted these signatures and they've been verified by the city clerk for us, I believe at this point, which is how they came to us. I guess my question to this body would be, what would be that next step to make sure that this hearing actually takes place?
Talking to the mic, Councilor.
The petition.
Can you read what the petition actually asked for?
It's the language about the public hearing.
Okay, so let's see, petition to the Holyoke City Council. And I'm just reading this. In the exercise of citizens' constitutional right of assembly and an exercise of the power granted by Section 8 of the City of Holyoke Charter, which states General meetings of the citizens qualified to vote may from time to time be held according to the rights secured by the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and all other such meetings may, and upon the request in writing of 50 qualified voters, setting forth the purposes thereof, shall be duly called by the City Council. At least 50 duly registered and qualified voters to the City of Holyoke and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, setting forth the purposes thereof, shall be duly called by the City Council. Do hereby call for a meeting of the Holyoke City Council to hold a public hearing regarding the memorandum of understanding between Holyoke Gas and Electric and Columbia Gas of Massachusetts to establish new pipeline infrastructure. The citizens of Holyoke were not asked to consider or provide feedback regarding building new pipeline infrastructure. The public has the right to weigh in on public record and to have councilors consider and moot the public comment received. We, the undersigned, call for a public hearing in City Council on this issue. So what I would say is, does any councilor want to weigh in on this? Councilor Sullivan?
I've got a real problem with this because it's not a new pipeline, all right? And that's putting out a gross misconception to the public. It's the replacement of an existing pipeline. So just the fact that that is a total misrepresentation, I would have to be against this.
Any councilors want to comment? Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, a couple of things. I do agree with what Councilor Sullivan just said, having had several meetings about this pipeline. Two things. Number one, I think the goal of neighbor to neighbor is, in this particular case, while it's aimed at this particular MOU for the pipeline, I think their ultimate goal is one of creating more reusable energy, which is a good goal and one that I think we should follow. Now, I do know that the Gas and Electric, and I've met with Mr. Lavelle a couple of times on this as well, is trying to figure out ways to continue to expand their renewable energy sources. So, I'm not sure. I mean, I have no problem having a public hearing. If people want to have a public hearing, I would think we probably would do it in the committee, but and letting people have their say. The other question I have is, how far along in the MOU is it, and does the City Council actually end up with a vote?
Councilor Valentin, have you inquired as to the law department on this, city clerk or the process and procedure?
I have not checked in with the law department. I was going to ask this body if, because I mean, obviously we've seen petitions like this come forward before. As Councilor Bacon just walked in, I remember something pertaining to Ward 5 that was along this line of like a petition for a public hearing where folks could come in and kind of give their 2 cents about a specific issue. I don't remember what the issue was, but as you walked in, I remember that was something that was Ward 5 specific. When was the last time we did something like this in terms of a group coming through with a petition for a public hearing? Do folks remember? I mean, I'm just trying to use that as an example of next steps. I think Councilor Bacon wanted to say something.
Well, in terms of the process, it's just if
Turn your microphone, Councilor.
it is on.
I can't hear you.
You hear me okay?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
pull it closer.
Now
so-
you can hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great, thank you.
If 50 or more people file a petition, then by charter, we hold a hearing on the matter.
But that's what they're requesting, and there's over 200 signatures.
Right, and so it could be by a committee, or it could be by the council as a whole. And it also occurred during the cat issue, if some folks might recall.
All right, so we did suspend our rules, and we had the public address us on this topic. So,
And If I may, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
And I did include that in my conversation with Neighbor to Neighbor, but when the tapes were reviewed, they very clearly stated, and I agree with them, that it wasn't publicized as a public hearing, that it wasn't, you know, in an opportunity where folks could really know that they could come in and, you know, it was a suspension of the rules within a committee. It wasn't really publicized as a public hearing, so it didn't feel as if that was satisfying this request from the over 200 voters that signed the document.
Did you ask the city clerk as to who pays for this?
No.
Okay. All right, so my
If I
Go
may, I don't remember it being a advertised notice similar to a public hearing for a zone change or things of that sort. It's that the petition, by the filing of the petition itself, it sets up for then on the agenda, you would say, public hearing relative to the matter.
It's all listed on the page.
well, I guess it would. Why don't we do this, Councilor Valentin, if I may? We'll table this right now in committee, assuming we vote for this. And why don't you do the due diligence to see, one, whether or not the meeting we had when we suspended when we allowed public comment the first time would satisfy this. Second of all, if a public hearing, if not satisfactory, if we have to advertise for it and have a formal public hearing in committee, that's fine, that's the law department. And third of all, who would be responsible for the fees? So a lot of times when we have a public hearing, most of the time it's the petitioner that has to pay for the advertisement for a public hearing. So for example, with a driveway, goes a special permit for a driveway, we need to the petitioner pays for the advertising fee. This is all just an open question on a charter. I don't want to rush something that violates city charter, and there's no need to rush this, in my opinion. So if you would, Councilor Valentin.
Bacon.
I just have,
Councilor Bacon, I'm
is
sorry.
this, is this on item 2A, the gas issue?
Yeah,
2B.
2B?
2B.
We gave leave to withdraw to the resolution piece.
Oh, okay.
Yep. But they still want the public hearing to happen.
Okay. Councilor Bacon, did you want to weigh in on
Yeah,
that?
I was just reading the order to see if the petition had requested a public hearing. It looks like the petition was in objection to the MOU. So it depends what the petition said that they wanted, you know?
It's what, yeah.
All right, I'm sorry.
That's for- yeah.
I'm usually on time, but a little behind the 8 ball tonight. But if they request a hearing,
Yeah,
It does vary.
it's, yeah, in the .6 font that's on here,
then that's,
it looks like a public hearing is requested. So I would say that, I don't know if the law department ever circled back to me on this, so I'm going to task this to Councilor Valentin. I'm just going to put in my notes to follow up with the law department on whether our actions at the prior meeting were satisfactory. If not, then who will advertise and who will pay?
we didn't
All right.
advertise.
That sound fair?
We didn't advertise.
Councilor Tallman?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a statement, and it clearly states that they're asking for a public hearing, and I think Councilor Bacon stated that there's no cost. I mean, we set it on the agenda that there'll be a public hearing.
I don't think we advertised for it.
Yeah, I don't think it's advertised like a zone change or a driveway permit. And if clearly they want that, I don't see a problem trying to set up a public hearing to hear them out. And I don't think that, as Councilor Valentin stated, that we suspended the rule to have them speak, but that wasn't really classified as a public hearing. We do that every meeting.
Right.
If somebody's here, we suspend the rules to speak. So, you know,
Right.
whatever the the group, our committee wants to do, but I feel that we should try to set up a public hearing for them in our committee, not the full council, but in our committee to hear out the petitioners.
Right.
Well, I guess right, but I want to we've got your definition of a public hearing. I don't know if that's the law department's definition of a public hearing. So I'm not going to agree with yours. So that's why I asked Councilor Valentin as the maker of the order to please contact the law department. So we may be just be able to write on our next agenda, we may be able to write public hearing, and that'll satisfy it, or we may not. And if it doesn't, is there a cost? The other question would be is whether or not the other meeting we had would be satisfactory. Now, I'm okay tabling this as I previously said. So I think I already said that. So so on 2B, are you okay? You're okay with doing that?
Yeah, I'm fine with the steps that have been,
Cool.
you know, explained. But just to be very clear for the record, that the feedback from the folks that pushed for this petition to be in front of us in the first place, over 200 signatures there that we have in front of us, the suspension of the rules of allowing them public comment during that committee meeting that we had, in their opinion, and again, I will of course check with the law department, but in their opinion, that was not satisfactory in terms of meeting the requirements for what they would consider a public hearing based on what the signatures of these petitioners is. So I just want to state that very clearly for the record.
And if I may,
Councilor Bacon.
I would just note for the interest of the committee, there's people who, knowing there is a public hearing on the matter that would be available, would probably also be interested in coming down and speaking in favor of it. So I think, you know, it's an opportunity for dialogue.
Yeah, just as we always do. And I would say that that how we ran the meeting the prior time would be exactly how we're going to run it
Right.
the next time. Everybody's treated with courtesy and respect. We heard everybody out. It's not a rambling riff where you get 20 minutes. You get a couple minutes and you can say it and we'll move on. So we'll have the exact same rules. So I would say that for the record, that everybody was treated courteously, respectfully, and listened to. In fact, I took copious notes on it, probably 5 pages of it. I don't think any other counselor bothered to take any notes that night. I think I was the only one. So with that being said, why don't we make a motion to table this?
So moved.
And then we'll move on, okay? On the motion to table, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, tabled.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Motion to take number 3 off the table.
Motion to take up item number 3 off the table discussion.
Motion made and second, remove item number 3 from the table. All in favor? Aye. Order taking for temporary easements by eminent domain parcels identified as temporary parcels 1 through 16 on the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division Transportation Improvement Project, improvements at Kelly Community School Plan Project number 608790, and as part of the Safe Routes to Schools project located at Appleton, Maine and Crescent Street. So we have with us Marcos Marrero and John Dijek from Office of Planning and Economic Development. Welcome, gentlemen. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the name of the program would suggest, the Safe Routes to School program is, the intent is to improve the walking routes that children take to school every day. Mass DOT has a program whereby localities can apply where they see that there is a problem, and it's a competitive program. We applied in 2013, and by the time we were selected and they did a full assessment of the area, this was particular for Kelly School. They published a full assessment of what the issues were by the end of 2016. By the end of 2017, they had already procured a design team, both internally and in MassDOT, and also a designer. World Tech is the firm, and they began that in October of 2017. preliminary design was completed in 2018. They also held a public hearing on the matter in January of this year. They expect to go out to bid by fall of 2019 with the intersection improvements, which are by the image, and if we go back 1 second, it is the intersection of Main Street and Appleton Street, which goes towards Kelly School, and a portion at the intersection with Crescent Street as well, as you can see there. Very important that the construction management of the project and the budget goes through Mass DOT. It does not cost the city anything. The city's role in it is advisory because we apply for it. They check with us in terms of the design that it meets sort of the vision for the area. And the big responsibility that we have is to make sure that we have the right-of-way rights to provide Mass DOT to construct on it. Of course, we own the right-of-way as a city, but there are a few temporary easements that we need to secure as part of Mass DOT projects. It's pretty standard that they require a 5-foot buffer, if you will, from the end line of construction. So those are easements for 3 years. In this case, they've all been donated by the abutters. They see this as a very positive project, and so they had every intention of trying to move this forward. So this will not be at any cost to the city. In general, the purpose of the Safe Routes to School project and here is to encourage students to walk or bike to school, increasing their safety, improving walkability at the intersection. There's no signal interface for pedestrians to cross to push a button. And it's also going to decrease the distance between the corners. And of course, I'll provide a copy of all of this electronically or physically, however you want. A couple of quick pictures of the status of the current intersection. There's outdated signal equipment, so this also benefits the vehicular signalizing. All that will be changed. It will add a phase for pedestrians, as I said. There's an unprotected left turn, so there's no signalized left arrow, and it's 2.5 times higher crash rate than the statewide and district average. So it's looking to decrease that for automobile safety as well. You can see some of the pedestrian accommodations under the bridge. It's dark. You have some of the sidewalks that are bituminous concrete. It's asphalt. It's cracked. In some areas, it has holes. Even the areas that have cement are cracked. So all that would be upgraded. So I went through a little bit of this, but I just wanted to provide it in writing for now and for the future, so you can see it. So they're going to be replacing all the existing traffic signals. It'll be a brand new signal system with a pedestrian activated crossing phase. It'll reconfigure the intersection at Crescent and Appleton Street. So realign the intersection approach is like how it curves, presumably to reduce speeds there, and get cars to stop at the intersection. There will be curb extensions at the crossings to reduce the distance that pedestrians have to walk within the street. Pedestrian improvements, we talked about improving the sidewalk. Some granite curb has to be reset, restriping, making sure that that there are ADA ramps. They don't exist in all the corners there. And we're trying to make sure that we can replace overhead lighting under the rail line. That's the most complex part because it's owned by the state, but Pan Am also has review authority. We're trying to see how we can get a license there. If we can't get it done, we'll do it. We'll get it done some other way, like have lighting off the sidewalk instead of off the bridge. And then there'll be bicycle accommodations, as is the policy of all Mass DOT infrastructure. They have a complete streets policy, so we'll be adding an exclusive bike lane going westward, and everywhere that there isn't a bike lane, there will be what's called sharrows. So it's arrows that indicate that it's a shared road, that bicycles have the right to be on it. So you'll probably recognize the type of map this is. This committee has taken up easements in the past. So that is the that is the property lines of the intersection of Appleton and Main Street. We've highlighted in pink/purple, depending on your affinity for seeing color, what the temporary easements are that would be taken. So, hey, some people just can't. At the intersection of Appleton and Main. So there's some easement off the parking behind the Cubit, some easements, again, all temporary, behind the Steam Building, some at the entrance of the church, and some off the auto use parcel there. And then off of Crescent Street, we have the property behind the church, and a corner at the entrance right next to Kevin Barbieri's property. What's the name? Griffin's, or it used to be. It used to be Griffin's Express. Yeah. So that's basically it. You know, they're going to be working in the right of way, in the sidewalk, but there are areas that they expect that they will be disturbing, and then they will either put them back to existing conditions. If it's grass, they'll put grass again. In some areas like that triangle, it's bituminous asphalt. That'll be grass, and that's been agreed to with the property owner.
Councilors have questions? Council Murphy?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So, first of all, the bike lane going up Appleton Street, going underneath that bridge. I mean, that's a pretty tight spot right now. So, are they taking away part of the walkway to make a lane for the bike, or is the bike just going to be in the car lane?
The project stops before the bridge. We're trying to do the lighting improvements under the bridge, but there will be no road work under the bridge.
But as far as the bike lane, it's westward from up Appleton Street to Main.
It's on Appleton, but it won't go under the.
So it won't go all the way down. So it really starts at Crescent.
Yeah, because there's just not enough space under the bridge.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And then the other thing is, and this is probably something you don't know, but maybe you do. So if I'm a student on Clemente Street, say Clemente and Spring Street, am I going to Kelly School or am I going to Morgan School?
I honestly don't know the district map by heart.
Yeah, I mean, I know
there are some residences that are subject to go to Kelly that have to go through Crescent, because there's what is that called? A walking school bus. So that was part of the assessment, that there are students that go through that intersection through Crescent, and that's why that was added. So I don't know how far it goes, but there are some students that do.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to see that we're trying to make it safer for kids to go to school. I'm just wondering why kids are going what appeared to be a longer distance than 2.5 blocks. They're going down and over probably more like 4 or 5 blocks.
Yeah, no, and we try to get as this is free to the city, so we try to get it extended as far as we can.
All set? Councilor Sullivan.
Thanks. Marcos, you said the railroad bridge is owned by the state or by Pan Am?
The state owns the rail line. They bought it in 2015 with the stimulus money, but Pan Am retains rights of operation, so we would probably have to check with them as well. So Mass DOT is trying to get their okay as well for, bolting a couple lights to it.
Yeah, well, it's not so much the lights. I mean, we're going to put lights under to make this safe for pedestrians. It floods almost every rainstorm. Every time it rains out, it floods under there, making it impassable for cars. And when it is passable, any bikes or pedestrians going under there are going to get sprayed. I mean, and also the height of this underpass makes it impossible. There's trucks, constantly trying to move around this town, getting stuck under these things. So they've approved all this money, but they've totally ignored the problem of the underpass itself as part of this entire safety upgrade.
So the purpose of the safety upgrade is to improve primarily the safety of students walking to school. It's my understanding, and I'm trying to visualize it, but it's my understanding that the pedestrian walkway is actually separated from the street by metal columns. And if I'm not mistaken, it's also a little elevated, just like under Mosier. So I mean, I haven't walked it when it's raining, so I can't say categorically that they wouldn't get wet, but it's not at the same height. There's a significant height differential. I don't know how they would be able to resolve the truck issue, because I mean, they would either have to raise up the rail line, or they would have to dig down probably 10 feet. And so, you know, from an economic feasibility standpoint, we use other routes.
Well, from an economic standpoint, it's now the state's problem, isn't it? They own the rail line and the bridge.
That's correct. They own the rail line and the bridge.
Okay, I mean, that's the point I'm at. All of this improvements for safety, and you've got this one bottleneck leading to the schools that's going to continue to be a real problem. They're totally ignoring this piece of the equation.
I can't speak for the state, but in my experience, they would probably answer with that would be outside of the scope of the Safe Routes to School program.
No comment.
Council Tomlin?
Could you explain, and I see the area and the pink and the purple, whatever, the temporary, what does that mean? Temporary easements, that means?
Temporary means that the city has acquired the right for, is it 3 years or 5 years? For 3 years
okay.
to be on that piece of property, which is, you know, 5 feet wide, and alter it. And then we are conceding that right to the state as part of the right of way. So after 3 years, you know, it's private property. No one has the right to be on there, but it's not permanent. We don't have a permanent interest in the land. It's only for that period of time.
Okay. And what is the time frame where this would be started? This fall?
When does the 3 years start?
No, when do you start the project?
So it's expected in 2020. We acquire the easements now. Once they're recorded, the clock starts ticking. This should be advertised before September 30th. So it'll is that right? Yeah, before September 30th. So, or it gets filed for advertising before September 30th. So the bids will be open sometime during the winter months. They have to file it for advertising before the end of the federal fiscal year. So we would expect that in the next construction season, this would be ready to go.
Okay, and like the whole area, the intersection, you said the lights, the crosswalks, the buttons, they're gonna do all that within
at the end of the project. Yeah.
End of the project, so probably be within a year.
Yes, this would be one construction season.
Because I think that might have been one of the ones that the city was on, one of the things that they were going to work on lights. The city, we have like 10 intersections or so many intersections in the city that need the lighting and stuff. You know, the new street, you know, the intersections that need lights. And this one, they're going to take care of the whole thing, everything, whatever it costs.
Yes, this would be the whole, yes, they take care of the whole shebang.
Because when you mentioned that thing about the left, I often do that going down Main and coming up Appleton, there's no arrow.
Right.
And that can be a little bit, you don't know the person's coming is going to turn, or they're going to let you go, or you can turn, but I think that would be a real benefit to that area, you know. But, I was just concerned the 3-year thing, and then, when the project actually started. So it probably won't be till not this school year, but the following school year.
Right. It probably at this point, somewhere a year from now.
A year from now.
It would be construction starting or starting to mobilize.
Yeah. Did they say what the time frame is for the completion once they start it?
We won't know the exact timeline until we have a contractor, because the Mass DOT wouldn't dictate means and methods. They can say if they want it in a certain time frame, but it's pretty simple project. It should be done in one construction season. So if it starts in the spring of 2020, it should be done by the fall of 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
Marcos, great job as always. This is pretty much a no-brainer, right? I think this is pretty much a straightforward.
I can't say that for you.
No, you don't have to.
They've all been donated. They've signed donation forms.
No, okay, say that again.
So all property owners have signed donation forms. So this comes to no cost.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I would certainly want to I see the private property owners. They're all kind of So it says SPS Investments LLC, Nestingly 181 LLC, Bill and Robert Johnson, I think that's Hampshire Towing.
Yes.
Pentecostal Church, the Ebenezer Pentecostal Church Assemblies of God, Barbieri Realty LLC. Those are the ones.
Yes.
So they all should be given, due credit and appreciation. I'm sure you put their names on the OPED website for your newsletter and all that, and if you haven't, I'm sure you will at some point, because they really deserve a lot of credit for this, for making it as painless as possible, because they have, right, I mean, I think ultimately it's going to prove probably their corners of the world, their partial corners.
Right.
But still, private ownership rights, we saw that with the rail station, right? Remember, I forgot the name of the owner. It doesn't matter. Was it Sun? Was it
May, Richard May?
Richard May?
Richard
Okay,
May.
Richard May. I knew I was like, he was a, well, whatever, worked out. Yeah. So, but he didn't make it easy. So sometimes it's nice when a private owner makes it easy. That's really exciting. So the schools should be impacted, for the safe, and this is a state program?
It's a state program, yeah. This would be for students, as it's mapped out now, it would be students going to Kelly School.
The Kelly School students, okay. And has the principal been notified?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the application process actually goes, you have to have the school principal on board for this. I also have to give credit to Matt Sokop, who initiated this with the school principal of Kelly at the time in 2013.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how long it takes to get stuff built.
Well, that's why we asked the question, right? Okay, and the school principal, who's the school principal at Kelly?
Right now it's Luis Soria. I don't know who it was in 2013.
Okay, and did you say Luis?
Yeah, Luis Soria. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'd want to make sure that the current principal's aware.
Yes,
and on board.
Yes, they are. There have been meetings with them, or the folks he's delegated to be at these meetings and sidewalks.
Okay,
yes,
and then Dr. Reich, I would imagine, would be duly noticed at some point, just to give him a heads up, and then the Ward 1 school, is that Millie? Millie Fave. Okay, so Millie would, certainly we want to have Millie be aware of this as well. And then the Ward 1 counselor, City Councilor Gladys, so certainly, we'll let Gladys know next Tuesday when unless she's watching this, when she may be watching it too. So certainly want to let the school, Ward 1 school person and Ward 1 City Councilor know, and then Dr. Reich, and so that's really exciting. I think so. You can, Mr. Murphy, as soon as I'm done.
Okay.
So I just one last thing. Do we know the total cost of this by any chance?
Well,
we
won't have
we have to wait
cost
for the
until-
bid?
Yeah, until it goes out to bid, we won't have the cost. I believe the total budget for construction is about $2.2 million.
Okay, Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, did I hear you say you think this is going to be done in the spring of 2020?
That's when it would start. Yes, spring next year, and it would be done in one construction season. So before frost.
Right.
So it's going to be a 6 or 7 month process. Okay,
Yep.
'cause I was thinking if it was a lesser process, then obviously while the kids are in school, maybe let it go, and then what? I'm fine.
Yeah, they'll figure out a way to be as less intrusive as possible. Yeah, and it is very possible they could do it over the summer. I mean, it's not that complex a job.
All right. So, any other questions? John, yeah.
I just wanted to comment that our city engineer was tremendous, not only dealing with the contractor and the state, but meeting with us and the property owners to explain what these easements were for and to help them get understanding, because you put this kind of design in front of people who aren't familiar with road construction plans, and it doesn't make sense. So he was tremendous throughout the whole process, and really is an asset to our work.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll thank Mr. Matt for his great work. Well, Mr. Matt's name is he came to be known when he first appeared in the committee, because one counselor couldn't remember it. We'll just leave that counselor anonymous, but calls him Mr. Matt. So we just kept calling him Mr. Matt from that point forward. It's a term of endearment. All right, so the motion is for the DGR committee to approve the resolution pertaining to the order of taking.
So moved.
There we go. Motion made and seconded. Motion made and seconded to approve the order of taking. Under discussion, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, great. All right, so we'll recommend that to the full board next week. And Marcos, I think we've got you for most of the rest of these. So let's just kind of, let me just make my notes fast. Committee, just give me 2 seconds. All right, great. All right, if I could get a motion to take 4A and 4B off the table.
So move.
On the motion to
Second.
take agenda items 4A and 4B off the table, all in favor?
Aye.
These were filed by Ward 5 Councilor Vacan. I keep calling Councilor Valentin. I apologize to both ladies. So I'm sorry for that from my misstatement for about the 19th time, by the way. First order is City Council be updated on the payment status regarding money owed under the lease held by Gandara at the former Geriatric Authority property, and the City Council be updated on the status disposition of the former Geriatric Authority property. Well, I think we got 4B under control. Councilor Vacan, did you want to address these specifically right now, or do you want me to just hear from Mr. Marrero?
Yes, I had spoken to Crystal, and she said she had researched them, and the Gandara matter may have been brought before us previously, and I had lost track of it in my files. But yeah, I'm just happy just to get the short bottom line version.
Marcos, what happened with, let's do 4A. So that's City Council be updated on the payment status regarding money owed under the lease held by Gandara.
My answer is simple because I have no idea.
Oh.
I just heard about this agenda item here.
Oh.
Yeah,
But I also haven't been involved in that lease before. So
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to go back and ask anyone, but
My mistake. All right. I'm sorry about that.
it was Crystal that was researching that.
Oh, Crystal. Okay. All right. What was Crystal's position?
My recollection, it was a conversation, I think, after a city council meeting, that at the time where the Geriatric Authority was closing and everything, there was some trade-off made between the city and Gandara relative to the upgrades to the property going against the lease expenses or whatever. I just had asked for clarification because I remember at the time thinking it was going to be problematic with that lease. But I think that, to my recollection, is what she said was how it got settled out between the city and Gandara, that it's closed.
Oh, okay. And in light of 4B, as we know, that's going to the...
And I had filed this before we got the answer and made the vote on the RFP process relative to the hospital. So I'm good with that.
Okay. So I'm going to say we could probably...
Timing is everything.
Yeah, it really is. We can probably say these are both complied with. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion that items 4A and 4B are complied with.
Motion made and seconded 4A, and just to make it clear, just under discussion, 4B, just to remind us, is the Geriatric Authority has been, well, actually, just under discussion, Marcos, where are we with the acute care facility? Where are they in the process?
we've drafted a purchase and sale agreement. We've provided it to them with all the exhibits, and it's under review by them, by their counsel, and we're just awaiting word back. As of 2 seconds ago, I don't have a reply.
I'll tell you what, that's pretty up-to-date information, Marcos. I expect nothing less from you, sir. But that's, okay, so the PNS is under review with the with the LLC combining the private company and Bay State. I can't remember their name, but, all right, so.
B2 LLC.
Sorry?
B2, B as in boy.
All right, B2 LLC. Okay, motion made and seconded. It's complied with. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
Motion to take up item number 5 for discussion.
On the motion, take agenda number 5 off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Number 5, order that the DGR committee meet to discuss the future status of the former Springdale Turn Hall. Is the building potentially able to be renovated and used as a neighborhood or rec department resource? If so, at what cost? If it is not, is it a fire threat to neighboring properties? What is the time frame for removing it? What is the estimated cost of demolition? This is filed by Council Murphy at the last meeting. Council Murphy, you want to address that, or do you want me to just go right to Mr. Marrero?
I did communicate with Mr. Marrero, and but I do think I'd like to get the update, and he did send me an update on it, and you were correct that it had been, just before I got on the council, it had been transferred and out. But I've had some neighbors asking me concerns about if there was a fire there, would it be causing us potential damage?
Fire away.
And also if there was potentially to be renovated. So those are my questions.
Marcos, any updates since our last? Marcos, just remind us what the action the body took, and if you have any updates.
Yeah, so the last action, the body actually took action twice on the property, right? Because there were 2 parcels, and it declared a while ago. It declared one of the parcels surplus, but the city didn't actually had not foreclosed for tax title the second parcel. So the last time you took action was to declare the second property surplus, because it really didn't make sense to sell them separately. We wanted to sell them jointly. So right after that, we issued a request for proposals with a package of other properties. Unfortunately, while we showed it to a few folks that initially had interest, we got no responses. Folks saw it as an expensive rehab. That's not to say, to the question in the order, that it's not possible or that it cannot be, but this is what happens with municipally owned foreclosed property that's been derelict over time. You gotta put it out there several times until someone's interested, or you start getting feedback from the potential developer community and start taking action. So with this one, it is in pretty tough shape for the size and the estimated cost. So we're trying to see what we could do with the in-house demo crew, whether that's some selective demolition, some cleanup, so that we maybe make it more attractive to a buyer. If the question is full demolition, then I don't think we're there yet now. We could be. I mean, if nothing happens with it, right, and it's so expensive to rehabilitate, I guess we would look into a credible plan for demolishing it. What would that cost? Because having land on that corner, it would probably lend itself to a good new housing development. We are seeing some infill development on River Terrace is seeing 10 new units. On Hamden Street, we're seeing 2 new duplexes. These are all just market rate.
The 10 units are Russell Terrace.
Russell Terrace, sorry. What did I say? River Terrace? Russell Terrace, right. So we are seeing that there is interest for some land, not everywhere, but for some land. And I would anticipate that this would attract attention if it was demolished. But of course, that's not free. So ideally, if it could be rehabilitated, then we would try to do that. So your questions are our questions. We're trying to ascertain that. There was one question there as far as a recreational facility. Frank, I had never been approached by anyone for a recreational facility. I assume the roof line is pretty high. Maybe we can do a wall climbing thing, but You know, if Parks and Recreation has an interest in it, I mean, I don't know, or anyone else. But.
You have the floor.
So, I mean, I've had neighbors who are looking for facilities, but I know the parks, having been on a Parks Commission and losing Lynch School as one of our after-school gym programs, our only after-school gym program, this came up. Could this possibly be, because I know there is a gym there and there's a hall there, could it possibly be a recreational facility that would give us some after-school programming and potentially some other community-type things? I assume, based on comments that I had with Councilor Sullivan when I first got on, that the cost is probably prohibitive in order to do that, but I did want to let you know that there are people that have asked if that could be done and have kind of thought of programs that they would like to see put in there. I mean, one of them was a wrestling program. Another one was a basketball program. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I've heard people talking about. But the other issue and the other thing that I have concern about is because it's not that far from housing and it's a big building. So if it went up in flames, would some of the housing that's relatively close be in danger? And it slants downhill a little bit, so it would seem like the fire would go towards the other houses. So those are two issues. And I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I agree. I think if it ended up being demolished, it'd be an area that could be developed. But my concern right now is making sure that we aren't endangering other properties, that whatever we need to do to make sure that the fire threat is as minimal as possible. And then if the other aspects don't work and we did some minor demolition and we thought we could maintain or revitalize as a public facility, I would also be interested in that because we don't have enough after-school recreation programs in the city, especially in the wintertime. And like I said, I know a lot of kids in the Springdale area in many days past used to go there and used to shoot hoops there and were allowed to while the people in the turn hall used to be downstairs having a few drinks.
Sullivan.
Okay, thanks. I took a little time to look a little deeper into it. The roof of this building is leaking severely. The roof is made out of transite shingles. Transite is a form of asbestos and cement. So you're looking at not just a patch job, it's an entire roof replacement of an asbestos-containing material. The heating system in the basement is loaded with thermal pipe insulation, which is also chrysotile type asbestos. It's beyond any rehab. My suggestion is, and however we want to proceed with this, that we go full bore on the demolition process and make this available for housing. That's the best need. Any thought of rehabbing a building now or spending city money on rehabbing when we've got right next door a city hall annex that is collapsing around our ears? We have fire stations with leaky roofs. We have a DPW with leaking skylights. To add another one to the roster now seems crazy. And in the meantime, yes, it is a huge fire hazard as well. And if it burns, you've got a lot bigger remediation problem than getting about the business at hand now. So.
Yeah, I concur with the kind of like the environmental threat assessment there. And it's kind of when I met with Selective Demolition, seeing what things we could take out now that even a private sector company would want to take out, and even us if we want to demolish it. And so we could probably, our hope is that we can do something more immediate, more short term, as we align the bigger funding for the demolition. So, no argument there.
Can't stress enough, when the roof is made out of transite shingles, that's part of the remediation, is taking the roof off. That's it. That's the end of the building. And you might as well just go ahead. You've had that number of RFPs out already. We ought to really get on with this process with no response to them.
Marcus, how's the demo budget looking?
Sorry?
Your demolition budget, either from CDBG funds or in your budget? Or
I don't get a demolition budget. CDBG has one, and they work with the building department on that, so I don't have the numbers. There's usually a queue of properties that need to be demolished for public safety.
All right, is this in the queue?
I don't have the answer to that, but I can figure that out.
Okay, yeah, maybe you could report back to Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Murphy, with additional intel. You know, sometimes it's hard I know it's hard for me to sort of track all these things, but just even what I do, but I'm sure they'd appreciate you just staying in touch with them on this. Councilor Sullivan?
I can answer the question on CDBG. On the last go-around, when we saw the mayor's recommendation, the budget for demolition had been zeroed out.
Yeah, we know that. But thank you for the reminder, Counselor. We know how that works. Okay, Counselor Murphy, what's your pleasure with this order?
That the order's been complied with, and that you know, we continue to have updates on what's going on. And again, if we can't rehab it and we're not getting a developer to come in, then let's find a way to get it done, demolished and clear it, and then let's get something else that's productive for the city there.
I'll second that.
On the motion being and seconded. On discussion, hearing none. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right.
Motion to take up item number 6 off the table for discussion.
Motion made and seconded. Remove agenda item number 6 off the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Ordered that the DGR meet with the Director of OPED, Director of the Community Development Office, representatives of HHA, One Holyoke, VOC, Nueva, and other interested parties to discuss the short and long-term plans for improving the Churchill neighborhood. At this meeting, the following areas should be discussed specifically: corner of Jackson and Maple, vacant lot; corner of Jackson and Chestnut, vacant lot; corner of Franklin and Chestnut, vacant lot; corners of Hampshire and Elm Street, vacant lots; parts of Walnut Street between Sargent and Hampshire, vacant lots and poorly managed properties; and Commercial Street, vacant lots between Sargent and Jackson Streets. Goal is to move the process to a recommended action and help create a timeline for what can and should be done and by which agencies. I did ask our administrative assistant to reach out to all these entities. I've got to assume that let's just see, send me a text. I don't have I'm assuming he did it. So, but at least we have OPED here. So we have the 3 makers right here. Councilor Murphy, I think you were lead maker on this. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, again, first of all, and I would like to, whatever we do today, like to table it, make sure we get everybody in, because, and I've gone through and I've met with quite a few of these, and just you walk or drive through Churchill, and it's been too long for the same kind of things being there. And I Maple and Jackson, that building came down in, I believe, in the Sullivan administration. And I know One Holyoke, I believe, developed a lot of the housing on Maple Street going up to Jackson Street. And I said, well, why don't we just try to continue something like that? Jackson and Chestnut, I met with the Housing Authority, and they've been trying to buy it. And to be honest, they think they need to find a better way to do it. And they talked about potentially eminent domain, but they have ideas. That was what they would like to do there, which they think could develop housing, but also enhance the quality of the park across the street. And so on Franklin and Chestnut, there's a lot that's owned, I think, by the Valley Opportunity Council, and it's been open, I think, for 15 or 18 years, but nothing is happening. I mean, there's a lot of things that are there, and I think we need to get all the players involved. Which players can take certain parts of it and start moving it in the right direction. If you are living in an area next to all of these vacant lots, and I will say the Housing Authority mows the lawn at Jackson and Chestnut at their own expense, just because if they don't do it, it'll be another continued mess. But my goal is to try to figure out a way to get us all together. Where can we start? what's our overall plan, and let's start moving. I mean, the people that live there deserve to have improvements made and not vacant lots just sitting there, and sitting there in many cases not being maintained. And the city can only maintain so many things. So that's my ultimate goal, and I thank Councilor Tallman and Councilor Sullivan for co-signing it, and I think they've been through there and have seen similar things, and I appreciate the committee taking it up.
Marcos, you want to add anything?
Sure. I mean, I can go through these one-on-one, or we can, I mean, I don't,
Sure. However you want to do it.
I wasn't sure what type of format you wanted to have for the conversation.
I don't know. Just
We had a couple of minutes and we threw some maps up there because that's what we do. We throw up maps on the screen.
okay. Great.
So this is the first property. So we took it in the order that the order talks about them. So this is the first property at Jackson and Maple, demolished a while ago. We actually did have an agreement with One Holyoke to purchase it. However, they could not commit to. And I apologize. I didn't have a lot of time from Thursday when I heard about the order to dig into all the details, but it was either put out to bid or to RFP. It was auction. Okay. So the auction had standard terms, including, what would usually be, there's a time period for development. Otherwise, there's a not a retainer, a reverter. Thank you. Wow, it's already late in my mind. Otherwise, there's a reverter, and so One Holyoke could not commit to a time frame. Land banking is the first part for a developer to have a project, but if you have a long queue of projects, you may not be able to to represent that you can do it in a timely fashion. Which is, I think, some of the issues that you're raising with your order, that some folks will land bank it and some users will pass while they're doing other projects and they're layering financing. Some take more time than others, or sometimes it's speculative, and that's when it becomes very, very dangerous to a community, when folks are speculating with land. So this is one that we would try to sell. Again, it is quite difficult from a zoning standpoint. It's almost undevelopable. I think from my memory, I want to say more than several months ago, the setbacks may be a problem on this one. Just as it is, I would say, on the corridor of Maple and High, there's a legacy of business highway zoning on Maple and High, just like there is on Main Street, that affects several properties. I can't remember specifically if this one is business highway. It is? There was a zoning issue. I know that there was a zoning issue and a setback issue that, by the time that you get done with all the setbacks on these little properties, then you have no space to develop. So it's something systematic that we're going to have to look at in these corridors, where the historic construction in them was dense construction, mixed use. And at some point in the, I want to say, early 70s, through the master plan of that time period, there was a conception of, all right, now we're getting highways. Now we want to have big tracts of land. Let's demo stuff, and let's have other type of development, which is not really where the current master plan is, or the current urban renewal plan. So there is some work on rezoning that has to happen with some of these smaller parcels, and it affects the corridors of Maple, High, and Main. So I would say this is an example of that. I think even if we were to try to sell it, someone's going to run into that. So that's what's up with that one.
Could I
I'll
just ask a question while you're on that one? That area there, and I remember when they took the building down, because it was just about ready to fall on the street. The city had quite a bit of money to get that taken down. Seems like when I go by there, sometimes there's cars and maybe boats. And is there any way the city could block that? We've done it in other properties, I think.
Put up a fence?
Yeah. Is that possible?
Technologically, yes.
It's just costly.
No,
it just looks, people going down, that's one of the main areas in Holyoke, and it just looks pretty bad. Sometimes you got 2 or 3 cars there, and sometimes cars are sitting there for a while, and you don't know if they're working on them or on that lot. But just something to throw out there, if it's possible.
Sure, I can communicate that with the
to clean it up a little bit. We've done it with other lots, I think, in the city. I think in Ward 4 they've done it a couple places where it really, really cleaned it up a bit. Not sure the people that park their cars there would be too happy, but in the blocks, but still something to think about.
Sullivan.
Yeah, Marcos, why when we've got this problem, why wouldn't we put these, why wouldn't we go ahead and get the zoning, the setbacks and the variances, all that work done ahead to make it available for a developer, to make it more appetizing for them?
I think in this case, honestly, I think it just fell through the cracks. It went through the auction process, and this wasn't high on my radar. I mean, honestly, this was a while ago. We have begun an effort to identify what the appropriate zoning would be. There is an order filed for Main Street. South Holyoke in particular is a little complex because, of course, 40 years have gone by, or 50 years have gone by since this zoning. So if and when I'm before you for that, I want to make sure that I have all the answers for you, and what's grandfathered, what existing conditions will be a problem, which won't if you were to zone change. This one for this area hasn't been filed. We're working on that one now. We have preliminary plans which would expand the business the BC zone, the downtown business zone, that can be used for mixed use. It can be used for housing as well, and it's very prevalent on the northern sides of High and Maple. It's just right off of 391. It's like it's a sea of business highway, and that's where you end up with these problems.
And that would include a variance on the setbacks to have that in place for a developer?
It would be a change to the zoning ordinance, which would be more appropriate. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, with downtown business, you can build up to the property line.
Okay.
Councilor Bacon?
That was my question. It was about perhaps changing the zoning. So
so we can
it's
work.
all covered.
Yeah, we can work on that. We have a meeting in a couple of weeks to discuss the South Holyoke one, because there are intricacies, and zoning is complex, so you can't just pull the trigger on it, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so we'll continue working on this one, and if it is the pleasure of the ward council, I think it is you there as well. Yeah, we can provide the maps, the analysis on it to have a zone change.
So there's no need for parking in that area, Terry?
The parking on that, the parking back when it was an apartment building was just a street parking. So, I mean, I know what, in the other cases, I believe they all have parking on the street. All the housing that was built by One Holyoke all the way from right to Maple and Jackson, all parks on the street. There might be one or two that have a driveway, but I don't think there's too many.
But in that area, is there a need for, would off-street parking be helpful or no?
It wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would be absolutely necessary, but I mean, clearly, if they were going to build a similar kind of, I think they would put parking. I would hope they would put parking in the back section, but I don't know if they would.
I'm just asking, just for your consideration. That's all.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
Okay,
But again, I like the idea. If we need a zone change to get it moved and to make it more palatable to do either additional housing or to get some additional business, but Councilor Tallman's absolutely correct. When you drive by there, you are not thinking this is a quality neighborhood. Sorry.
Marcos, you want to? You can. We can roll down the list as.
Sure. These Councilor Murphy talked about in the context of the housing authority. This is the one behind Falsetti Towers, privately owned. They're, it's up to date on taxes. It's not in tax title or anything like that. It would be valuable for housing. It has the what was the name of the project? Churchill. The big project back in the 2000s. The Churchill homes across the street. So that's certainly a possibility, but it is privately owned. One of the issues that when we talk about the housing authority, I won't speak for them, but just from my standpoint, what's very interesting of where they stand now is that they've been able to get through this process with Lyman Terrace, and have gotten additional capacity and experience with that, but also for the next several decades they're not responsible for the maintenance of Lyman Terrace. That under the public-private partnership goes on to TCB. So they've freed up some resources and are gearing up to be a more active developer in the community. So for these things that we're talking about, they'll be in a much better position in the next 5 years that they were not in over the last 5 years. And so that's encouraging because they will be able to tackle stuff like this. Through my conversation with Matt Mainville, it doesn't seem like, at least in the recent history, that they've exercised eminent domain over a property. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't or they can't. They absolutely can. And so if it came to something that was just stopping development and it was integral to a broader plan, they could do that. But as it stands right now, it's private property.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand this, so they would start the eminent domain process, the housing authority,
They could. I would also say that I think the same owner of this property sold under friendly terms, right? Didn't they own something in the Churchill block? I think it was the same owner the same person that sold them another property. So he may just have a price and it may be reasonable or unreasonable. I don't know. I haven't been part of those conversations. So what's important is that before exercising eminent domain, just as we've had that conversation here, the same would apply to the housing authority, that you're making every attempt at having a reasonable market transaction, and it's not that you're just trying to infringe on someone's private property rights. Now, the reason eminent domain exists is because sometimes being the last holdout is very valuable. It's like, my asking price is $1 million. Well, no, that's unreasonable, right?
And that's, to some extent, that's sort of what I hear. And then the other thing, I know what they talked about there was, because right across the street we've got the park, and they talked about being able to put some things there that could enhance the atmosphere of the park, because there's nothing there right now but a vacant lot on that part that they have, according to what I heard, they have some issues that are there that they think had there been residences there, people would not be doing what they're doing. And again, as I understand, that 02, I'm going to say that's probably a 30-year vacant lot right now. And 03 might also be a 30-year vacant lot, but there was a big fire there when I was younger, and it was, again, it's 30 years. Let's get something, and let's try to put something there that's going to make the quality of the neighborhood improve. And again, the housing authority right now maintains that property for that landlord, and they've tried to negotiate a price, and I didn't, when I met with Matt, I was talking about, all right, well, what are your options? And I know eminent domain was talked about, so I just wanted to clear that they are empowered to do that as well. So
Next.
This property at the corner of Franklin and Chestnut, the record shows that it's Valley Opportunity Council, or it's in the care of Valley Opportunity Council. This is one of the ones where I would have liked to have been able to research it a little bit more before riffing with the committee. But what I do know is that VOC came into ownership of the building across the street, Voces de Esperanza, and that parcel seems to be in the same ownership of Voces de Esperanza, so not like uniquely under VOC, but under the same structure of that building. So after a lengthy process of the state designating who's going to be, again, I don't remember all the intricacies of it, but VOC is essentially now the caretaker of these properties. It's possible that they came into ownership of this vacant parcel at the same time that they did the building. I can't categorically make that affirmation, but it would seem on a cursory review that that's certainly possible. I drew the short straw, and I'm the only one here. So,
and again, my understanding is it's about 15 years, and we've got nice houses that have been built right across the street. We've got the Churchill homes, we've got other things that are happening there. So again, if we can do things there and not just have a vacant lot there, I certainly, and that's why I wanted to invite everybody. So we get all the parties together, then we know what the pros and cons are. Right. Can this party work with that party to move the process? But again, I think, I would think you could probably get 3 or 4 nice homes there, if that was the desire, to continue on with the Churchill homes, and that would certainly seem to make sense to me. And again, it would continue to enhance the area, it would provide additional tax revenue, and it would just make the neighborhood that much better.
Right, and so I can't speak for them as to whether they would develop that one. I can say that first in their queue is, and I know Councilor Sullivan is very intimately familiar with this, the council as a whole voted to provide VOC with $100,000 for the Voces de Esperanza project. They have since also leveraged that project with a project on Pine Street, 123 Pine Street. So that's going to be their number one priority to start next year. Once they're done with that, I mean, I actually don't know if they have the capacity to do two of those projects at the same time. But if not, you know, they may be putting themselves into the position of being able to do that later. I can't speak for them, but it would seem very plausible.
That's VOC?
Yes, the Valley Opportunity
Okay,
Council.
all right. All right, and then next.
These two properties are City of Holyoke owned. They are across the corner from the big, you'll recognize it as, I've been calling it just the Chestnut Block. The City Council has been most intimately familiar with that based off of the discussions of the new middle schools. So in the short term, while that gets decided or not decided or whatever happens there, we're trying to see whether the construction will need additional space. So this is in the very short term, right? There's decisions that have to be made or wherever that lands. So what we don't want to do is sell these and then in hindsight say, oh, if we only had another little lot for, you know, whatever, green space, athletics, you know, more than likely parking. And so, you know, once that gets settled, that seems to be like a more higher level decision that needs to take place. Once that decision happens, then we know what is needed in addition, or even if it's not that. You know, we know that we've set up a situation where this could be a school or this could be housing on that block, but that seems like the higher order decision, and those two lots would follow suit.
And those are both city-owned?
Those are both city-owned at this point, yes.
All right, next.
These three, parcels 4, 5, and 6, are vacant, and I think they're mentioned in the order. Parcel 6 is privately owned. As far as we can tell, they're up to date on taxes. Parcels 4 and 5 have been declared surplus. The thinking behind it was particularly that we could package it somehow with the armory. This was before the self-demolition of the armory, because it was land constrained. So we couldn't imagine a situation where someone would rehabilitate the entire armory and not have access to some sort of parking facility. So similar to how the library has a parking facility in the middle of the block, we saw that maybe that could be possible with a connection. At the point where the armory collapsed in the back, we didn't see that as much as a big priority. There is interest in those lots by the housing authority, and so referring back to the agreement on the schools, one of the contemplated payments for the land on the housing authority would be they would credit a transfer of these lots as partial payment. Now, of course, if the schools don't go forward, we could also do that as well. But it's kind of nice of them to say that they would credit. That this would be credit if they got these.
So the housing authority, the city owns 4 and 5, not the housing authority.
Correct. The city owns 4 and 5.
And 6 is privately owned?
It's private, yes.
Do we have any idea how long it has been like that and privately owned?
I don't know.
Okay.
Next.
These 3 on Commercial Street are all private. Lots 2 and 3 off of Avon Place seem to be behind on taxes. Is that right? Yeah, they're in tax title now. So, but we haven't foreclosed on it yet. Number 8 is not in tax title. It's not behind on taxes. Number 9, it's not highlighted, but number 9 is under same ownership as building 10 right next to it. So presumably that was bought together to provide an amenity, but they haven't. It's just, as you can see in the lower right-hand image, it's just one continuous piece of grass.
Do you know who owns 10?
Not off the top of my head.
Is it?
I don't know.
And this is another, but it kind of goes to the same, because I'm in that same area. Is that, I'm going to assume that's 7 Franklin Street? Number 10? No way of knowing. Is there a shelter there that we operate, or that the state operates? Any idea?
I'm not aware one way or the other.
Okay. Okay, so 2 and 3 are going to tax title more than likely, and the city will have them at a certain point.
Unless they pay, you know.
Yeah, but the odds are probably we're going to own them. And you said 8 was in good shape as far as payment,
Yeah, as far as payment.
and 9 is owned by 10.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, so, okay, 8 is not behind in taxes? 8's okay?
Yes.
Okay. I had my notes wrong. I just want to clarify my notes, sorry. I think we ran the gamut there, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, Council Murphy.
I would just like you to, and I appreciate the time given, because I think, Churchill needs to get, and you're going to be hearing me talk about South Holyoke in the future, but Churchill needs to get the same kind of attention as South Holyoke. But I would like to table this and invite all those parties back in so that we can get, whatever we need to do, and then get some kind of final resolution if we can.
All right, well, that's your motion?
I make it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
I had an answer to at least one of your questions because I just looked it up. So that building is 7 Franklin Street, and it's owned by 7 Franklin Street Realty Trust. Co-owner is Eastside Holyoke LLC, care of Virgilio Property Management. So I don't know by that information if Virgilio Property Management owns it or literally they're just the caretaker of it. That also happens.
Thank you. So I'll make the motion to table.
Motion,
I'll second that.
motion made and seconded to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion's made, and so that's tabled. All right. All righty. Let's see here. On the hit list, we are at,
Motion to take up item number 7
Item
off the
number
table
7.
for discussion.
motion's made and
Second.
seconded to take item 7 off the table. On the motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, this is, yeah, I wanted to just keep this alive. This is the little pocket parcel at 416 Appleton Street, across the street from the YMCA, proximate to where Beach Street and crosses Appleton. Marcos, where are we with this?
So we're behind on it. I mean, that's the first admission. We should be. I should have been in a position to give a final solution for this already, but where we are is we expect to set up a public hearing through the Parks Commission, which is now clear to us through the law department. We have to start there. We need to advertise that for 30 days, which is why we would need to do it in May and not this month. So once the Parks Commission has their public hearing and affirmative, and not only affirmative, it has to be unanimous vote, then it would come to the City Council where it wouldn't need a public hearing here. The public hearing, initially, my guidance to the committee was it needs a public hearing here, but it's not here. The public hearing has to be so the law states it's a Conservation Commission or, something else. So the something else was what tripped us up. We've determined it's the Parks Commission because it was, the documents that we have shows that it was acquired for the purposes of recreation of a park. So they would vote on it after a public hearing. It would come here, and then the council would decide on the local petition question.
We have a public hearing this committee?
No, it wouldn't be a public hearing. You would take up the matter like you are now.
Okay.
But we would need to do that after the public hearing.
There's one public hearing, and that's in Parks
Commission, yes.
Park and Rec Commission.
Yep.
All right, so subsequent to that, after the unanimous vote, assuming that happens, it would come, a communication would be sent to City Council?
Yeah, I would communicate it directly to you as the chair. You could put it on the docket again.
Yeah, if I may, I would say the best way to do that is to send a communication from the Park and Rec Board Commissioners to the city clerk, and so she can put that communication on a regular City Council agenda, and then we would just send that communication here to this committee, and we would proceed accordingly.
Okay.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, just, and So if I'm reading this correctly, we're talking about taking that 416 Appleton Street out of our park capacity and replacing it with the park down here, correct?
It's taking away its designation because it hasn't really been used as a park.
Yeah.
So it's basically a trick on paper. The law states it's a park. It's not used as a park. So taking off that designation and then putting that designation as something which is currently open space and built that way.
So this is not considered a park as it is now?
It's not under the jurisdiction of Parks and Recreation, but it is city-owned and it's open space.
So it would become under Parks and Recreation? Because I know when I was on a Parks Commission, now we looked at Anniversary Field when we were talking about are we selling Lynch and people wanted to buy Anniversary Field, that if we were to sell that, we needed to provide a space that was equal to or greater than.
Right.
And designate that as a replacement. So I know.
Correct. And so that's why, so there's a three-pronged threshold in the replacement. It's in size, in recreational value, and in monetary value of the investment, right? So what's good about 416 Appleton is that it has no recreational value because it's not being used. So arguably this open space has a higher use. The reason why the state puts that criteria there is that they don't want localities taking out soccer fields with a very active soccer community and saying, now we're going to have a baseball field. You know, that wouldn't be fair to soccer players. Whatever. It's the example that just came to mind. But that's why they don't just want you replacing it for something that's going to drastically affect negatively some part of the community. In size, that's the way that they leverage having more open space and recreational space. So the size is pretty small over there. This thing over here is 5 or 6 times probably the size of 416 Appleton altogether. The portion that the city controls by itself is bigger. And then in value, it's also pretty easy because that 416 Appleton hasn't seen any investment. It's just a dirt lot, and there was CDBG monies put into the open plaza. So it meets the threshold for energy environmental affairs, and so it's just switching that designation from one to the other.
Council Sullivan.
Yeah, we just had a CPA approval go through for 52 acres out in the Glutac Woods, out in Rock Valley. Why wouldn't we use something like that for the swap instead of a piece downtown that we'd encumber? That piece now is going to be encumbered forever. Why would we do something like this that would encumber a piece of property right here in a downtown business district?
It's a good question. I honestly haven't looked at whether it would meet EA's requirements because chronologically this order has been on the table for at least a year, and the Glutech acquisition wasn't part of my universe at least
right.
At that point.
Is that something that
we can take a look at it?
As long as we've got time now that if we're going to table this, right?
Well, I'm glad I brought it up then. See that? See that, Councilor Murphy? Councilor Murphy, the rookie. He's still trying to get his feet on the ground. Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, just a couple, and you're right, this has been on the docket for about a year, probably a year and a half, and I think Joe McGivern had a good talk about what this actually happened years ago. I mean, the history of it and everything, and not being used as a park. But the question now, this would go to the parks, and then they would have a public hearing, come back to us, and does it still have to go to the state?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
they would
so
still
they have
to
to
go to
prove-
the State House.
Okay, and you mentioned that the parks, let's say they have 3 people, it has to be unanimous.
Yes,
So one person can say no, and then it's done.
correct.
And then we're back at what?
We keep a dirt
Keep it, yeah.
lot.
Because I think a couple of years ago, we actually tried, a couple of the abutters try to use that we try to get that as a parking.
Correct. So
Right.
we actually went ahead with an RFP. We made a selection for several reasons that was not accepted. When we were doing it again, Sidell and Sidell actually ran I can't remember why, but they ran into the documents and they
Right.
showed us in black and white. I mean, I know the story that Joe has said, or the history as he remembers it. I don't question his truth. I mean, he lived it. I wasn't there.
Right.
Unfortunately, the only thing we have to go by is these documents. So anyone who would want to close on a sale is going to look at it and say, I can't do this. This is not clean title. So, you know, whatever actually happened, unfortunately, the document trace doesn't allow for clean title, and this is the way of doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so we had a few years ago, we had somebody coming in, and we rejected the offer here. So
Yes.
that's how it kind of went back onto our balance sheet. And then Sidell came across this issue again. And then the order was filed through the ward counselor, and it landed back in this committee, the same lot. And we heard the whole history from Councilor McGivern, which was a great history. Yeah. And but we're still unwinding it. But it sounds like we have at least some light now, potentially at the end of a long, windy tunnel. All right, so I think a motion to table will be in order.
Your motion to table?
On the motion table, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're tabled until we hear back from Park and Rec. Okay.
Motion to take up item number 8 off the table for discussion.
Second.
On the motion to remove agenda item 8 from the table, all in favor?
Aye.
Agenda item 8 is where? Well, I don't have the actual agenda item, so let me just. Oh, yeah.
Always got a sore throat. You know, talk a lot sometimes.
That isn't us, is it? No?
No, thanks. Harp?
Stay here for a second.
Okay.
David Potter?
Oh, harp. Just harping it out.
Yeah.
I was here last week. So, well, I'll tell you what, we'll go without it. We'll just read it from the record. This is filed by Councilor Mee, Councilor LeBron Martinez, ordered that the City Council invite in David Potter in order to present and discuss the HARP project. If the administrative assistant could join us, that would be helpful. So I'll just wait for him to come in here. Administrative assistant, he said he left a message for Mr. Potter. Is the administrative assistant joining us? Okay. Okay. What's the update with this one, Ryan?
I had a phone number for Mr. Potter, but I left a message, and I'm not sure, I didn't hear back from him, didn't get any other feedback.
Okay, and so what the administrative assistant said was we left a message for Mr. Potter, and we didn't hear any feedback. Mr. Murrow?
The committee should be aware that Mr. Potter was elected mayor of Carmel by the Sea, so it may be hard for him to come personally before.
Oh, my.
Oh, he's the one. I think I met him.
Yeah.
He's an elected
Carmel by the
mayor
Sea, yeah.
in
He's now an elected
Carmel
mayor.
by the Sea, California, somewhere
yes.
near Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
If I remember right, wasn't there a famous actor?
Yes, there was.
The mayor of Carmel by the Sea, by the name of Clint Eastwood?
Oh, is that
Yeah.
right? Oh, okay, there we go.
Okay, so this is getting into like
You may have to
big
Skype
movies
him in,
and all
is
that.
all I'm
It's
saying.
like somebody could be a director. Listen, I don't see anybody here from representing it. I'd entertain a motion to give this leave to withdraw. So unless somebody has a better idea.
We just complied with, we invited him and he didn't come.
Well, can we table it? I mean, if the two counselors are, I know they're not here, but is it possible to table it and see if they can contact them?
And anything is possible at this
I
point.
mean, I'm sort of interested in what this HARP project is all about. I know.
He's not coming.
I'm just spitballing here. If you want to hear ideas, I mean, there may be other people in the project that are willing to come.
So,
But
Councilor Sullivan, do you have any awareness of this?
They came around a year ago. I don't think they've been around. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that would like to add anything to that, but
Says
It is?
So, motion to suspend, allow the public to address.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor? Mr. Shealy, do you want to address us on this? Just come up to the mic and turn the mic on, and maybe you could give us the Reader's Digest version. Turn the mic on, Glenn.
The quick version is that the project is dead. The Potter Group gave up their interest in developing the land along Water Street.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shealy. I'll entertain a motion
I
then.
got Marcos has something to add to it.
Marcos, please.
Well, while that may be true, they are still seeking other land in Holyoke. So, I mean, I don't care whether the council hears it or not personally. I'm just saying, it may be dead in one location. It may not be wholly dead in Holyoke.
Right.
Okay, so you do have information on this, and so you said Mr. Potter was the mayor of Carmel by the Sea, and I thought that was extent of your knowledge, but now it sounds like you might have additional information. Do you care to share it?
They're still seeking for a site in Holyoke.
Who are they?
So David Potter is one of the principals. La Lima Development is another one of the principals in the project.
I'm sorry, the second name?
La Lima Development. It's a development company based in California, and they do projects out west.
Anything else?
No.
I just wanted to make a statement. I had met Mr. Potter at a fundraiser in the last 2 months, and he gave me his card. He talked about some kind of project he had in Holyoke, or maybe some property. So I saw this name. I didn't realize that was him, but I did meet him, and he talked to also to the Ward 1 Councilor Gladys Lebrel Martinez about possibly meeting her later on. I think he comes out in this area every so often down towards Boston. But maybe the group, if it's in the area, I mean, I could try to contact him and find out. I would hate to say let this go, because I see Gladys and Todd McGee's name on this order. I'd hate to see it, just disappear. I mean, there might be something that they could possibly get here for our next meeting, and
I wasn't contacted by either counselor on this, and they get the agenda just like
oh,
everybody else does.
They do, I know.
So they didn't tell me what to do on it.
I just think out of fairness to them, and we've done that before where the people didn't make it here, and I know they didn't give a reason, but if this gentleman is in this group has a possibility of looking at some property in Holyoke, possibly purchasing and starting something here, I think we should try to keep this in the committee and possibly try to get a hold of somebody from them, from that group, the development group, and try to get them down here at the next meeting.
Motion to table?
Can
Councilor
you
Bacon wants
just
to recognize?
remind me what HARP stands for? What the acronym is?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
Is it,
I honestly can't even remember. I think
is
the
it
H is Holyoke.
housing? Is it?
No, it is a cannabis project.
Oh.
It is a grow, processing, and there's a heavy research component,
Oh,
research and development component.
oh, okay.
So
Thanks.
they're not just a commercial.
We have to allow them.
It's not a like the normal commercial model that you've seen. They're trying to do research and development.
Oh, okay.
We can get the
Under
answer.
suspension, Mr. Shealy, you want to add to this?
If I could clarify, HARP originally stood for the Holyoke Advanced Research Park, which was the 17.5 acres that I own along Water Street. They had come in, the La Lima Development Company had come in and under a signed agreement to develop the parcel, and then decided not to go forward with the development. So as far as I know, unless they've been offered other land by the city, they are no longer interested in Holyoke. I've tried to contact them, and I get minimal to no response from them. So maybe Marcos knows more about their interest, but they're not interested in the parcels that I own presently, which are the Holyoke Advanced Research Park.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I think we had, Marcos, did you want to?
No, I was just scratching.
Well, why don't we, I have a motion to tables made and seconded. On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the only thing we didn't have on this agenda item, which I asked to be put on there but wasn't put on, it's just to set the next meeting date. And I'm wondering if May 13th is available for anyone or not. May 13th?
Good for me. It's a Monday?
I can do that.
Mike? Peter?
Good. It's a Monday night?
Mr. Murphy, it is a Monday, and it is 6 o'clock still,
6 is good for me.
still okay for everyone?
Yes.
All right, so our next meeting will be May 13th, 6 PM. All right, that's great. Thank you, everybody. Just one more motion.
Motion adjourned.
Motion made, second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.